Hi there and welcome to Tugboat, where we help you navigate your own insurance claim like a pro. My name's Cameron.
And I'm Aaron, and today we're going to be diving into the 5 worst insurance companies, according to us, and why they're the worst. So let's get into it.
All right, so we've already done a video about who we think the 5 best insurance companies are based on how they handle claims. But sometimes simply knowing who to avoid can be just as helpful. So here's the last 5 insurance companies we would ever recommend based on our experience.
And just like our video about the 5 best companies, we're going to be basing this off how they treat their customers when they have to file a claim, and not just on who has the best premiums.
You'll notice that you've probably seen most of the companies on this list in some type of commercial, on a billboard, maybe even a Super Bowl commercial. They are some of the most well-advertised options on the market.
But in our experience of actually helping people deal with their claims, they should have probably spent some of those advertising dollars taking care of their actual customers.
Aaron and I are both licensed adjusters. He's worked as an independent adjuster, so have I. I'm also licensed as a public adjuster and have done work in that field as well. And together we built an online tool called Tugboat that helps people navigate their own insurance claims like a pro to get more fair settlements. So this assessment of these different insurance companies comes from all of that experience, both working for many of these companies and helping individuals get more fair settlements when they've had claims with them.
The first on our list is Mercury Insurance, and you only have to deal with these guys if you live in one of 11 states. And normally, while that would disqualify them from our list, they were so bad that we just had to include them anyway. Now, this isn't to say that no one's ever had a good experience with Mercury Insurance, but we've seen contractors turn down jobs the moment they realize Mercury is involved. And this is because getting them to pay what it takes to do the job is often more trouble than it's worth. Their commercials say they are insurance for smart people, but if you ever have to file a claim with them, you're gonna feel pretty dumb.
Now let's talk about AAA. They may be the premier roadside assistance program, and I'll admit, I've had to have them tow my car away before, and it's been a great experience. But when it comes to home insurance, their customers run a good chance of being stranded and left with a hefty bill. We have repeatedly seen AAA stand by lowball repair estimates that no licensed contractor would actually sign off on. Now, just as a side note, I've actually had a AAA adjuster recently tell me that, hey, I know that that's what the costs actually are, but I have to estimate it based on our guidelines, which is absolutely ridiculous. We're gonna talk about guidelines here in a moment. Just know that that's not your policy and that's not what they should be basing your estimate off of. AAA also has a reputation for using consultants with a very poor track record. That means locally they're not respected, they don't have good reviews, they may not even be licensed, and yet AAA is using them as a professional opinion so that they can push these lowball estimates on you and try to convince you that someone would actually do the work for that amount of money. The adjusters we've worked with have had minimal authority to actually settle disputes when they come up, and those disputes come up over and over. So it's this huge roadblock keeping you from actually getting things done, and oftentimes people just give up and walk away.
All right, next on the list we have State Farm, the largest insurance company in the United States. They want you to believe that they're everyone's neighbor and the top choice of your favorite football player. But the truth is, when it comes time to file a claim, you'll likely wish you'd gone with someone else. Part of the problem with State Farm is the scale at which they operate. They contract with hundreds of other companies to write estimates and consult. And as you can imagine, the quality of those vendors inevitably varies from one job to the next. We have seen it take well over a month just to get a callback or an update from an adjuster. And when it comes to negotiating, their average adjuster has so little authority that they have to stand firm on even the most simple disputes. And lately we've seen a pattern with State Farm unfairly denying claims without a thorough investigation or even an initial inspection. Which means it is all the more important to make sure that your claim is presented properly and professionally.
All right, now on to Allstate. Allstate has one of the worst reputations among insurance professionals. Now, this is primarily due to their strict adherence to their estimating guidelines. You see, with insurance, there is the policy, which is the contract you've signed, and the guidelines, which aren't in the contract or in the policy. And when it comes to paying claims, Allstate seems to treat their extremely close-fisted guidelines with a lot more authority than they should, which makes negotiating a fair settlement an exhausting endeavor. One of the easiest ways to see this play out is during a hail event, where Allstate's guidelines have left many homeowners with the only unrepaired roof on the block. And a quick note on estimating guidelines as they relate to hail damage. So if a hail event happens in your area and it damages your roof, your insurance company is going to come and take a look at how many points of damage are on your roof within a 100 square foot area on each slope of your roof. A little bit complicated, but basically a 10 by 10 square on each slope of your roof will be drawn, and they'll see how many points of damage are within each of those squares. Well, most insurance companies will say that they will replace that slope of damage if there's, say, 8 to 10 points of damage. Allstate requires nearly double that amount of damage to actually replace that slope. And then on top of that, they're going to argue with you as to whether or not the full roof should be replaced if it's older, or whether it can be repaired, and what the actual repair cost would be if you were replacing every single shingle, but not actually an entire slope. And it can get really exhausting to try and win all those different little arguments, so it's best to just avoid them altogether and go with a different insurance company. And the important part, like we already said, none of this is in your policy. It's all an estimating guidelines that are not in the contract you sign, not in your policy, and not anywhere that you can actually read, even if you wanted to.
All right, last we have Pacific Specialty. This is one of the smaller insurance companies available across the United States. So the fact that we have to help so many of their customers with their claims should say enough. They basically have all the same issues as the big carriers listed previously: poor communication, strict estimating guidelines, and often inexperienced adjusters. And just like the others on this list, we'd recommend you avoid.
So there it is, our list of the 5 worst insurance companies from our experience.
And while it's a good rule of thumb to steer clear of the titans like State Farm, Pacific Specialty, with their relatively small market share, has left a pretty strong impression with their failure to take care of their customers.
And there are still hundreds of insurance companies that we have little to no experience with, and that likely aren't being considered by the list that you might be reading about who has the best insurance policy or who's the best carrier. Typically, those lists are considering the larger carriers, which are the same ones that we've addressed here.
So if you're shopping for a policy, we recommend you consult with a licensed insurance agent in your area who's familiar with who's serving your market. But don't just ask them about the cost of the premiums. Ask them about the types of claims being denied by each carrier and what their reasoning was. And it may go without saying, but avoid any insurance company that has a reputation for denying lots of claims.
And at the end of the day, the most important factor in getting your claim handled properly and paid fairly is you. It has to do with how much of an active role you're willing to take in the process. Don't let your claim get away from you, especially if you have one of these insurance companies. You can still navigate your claim like a pro. So like and subscribe for more insurance tips.